Hi guys, and it's that time of year again to look at what are the sort of classic cars that you should be looking at buying in 2025. I do this every year actually, and so if you're looking to invest in a classic car, that would be a wise investment for 2025, so stick around. That's what we're going to be talking about, but not necessarily just about investment. I mean, perhaps you've just always dreamed of owning a classic car, that will take you out to car shows in the summer, or something that will, deliver a more visceral driving experience. Maybe you're just tired of the anodyne feel of, the modern motoring, the way that things are right now. And you yearn for something that, really connects you to the road. I mean, if those of you who have been following my BMW E30, for example, and whenever you've seen videos of me driving that, you see how much the difference is of just enjoying the experience of driving that car. It's not super fast or super powerful or anything like that, but it's just connected. That's just how it is, and that's what you get from old school cars. So maybe you want to do that. Maybe this is the year you want to do that, or maybe you just want to have something cool, and that's perfectly okay too. That's absolutely the right thing to be thinking about. Why not? But if any of those reasons are reasons that you're thinking, okay, maybe 2025 is the year I should get into classic cars, or maybe you just want to add to your collection because you've already got one or two, then in this video we're going to be analyzing Hagerty. Hagerty is the insurance company that specializes in classic cars, and there's Hagerty UK and there's Hagerty USA, and every year they do a bull market list. They do one each for USA and for UK. USA came out at the end of last year, and the UK list, the 2025 bull market list for the UK, has only just come out now. These experts meticulously study the market to identify, some absolute gems. Though I have to say, a few of their picks this time did leave me scratching my head a little bit. So don't be surprised if you hear perhaps a hint of skepticism in my voice about a couple of these cars, but you'll probably be able to see or tell which one those are. The UK bull market list, I should say, has got 10 cars in it. And the US bull market list has got 11 cars. So these are the cars that they've selected. 10 cars from the UK bull market list and 11 from the US. I think 11 from the US because I think they've included a member's choice this time as well. So to get it up to 25, because there's 25 cars to buy in 2025, of course, stick around to the end, because at that point I'm going to reveal 4 of my own suggestions. So these are the cars that I've identified. So 4 classic cars that I'm going to add into the list, and I'm going to do that at the end of the video. I think you'll be interested to hear those, so I hope you'll stick around. And of course, as always, I'd love to hear which of these cars appeal to you, but also which cars maybe I missed and which cars you think are actually the right ones to be getting into in 2025. Right, let's get into this right after this.
A brown car guy.
So first up, let's look at the cars chosen by Hagerty UK. So the Hagerty UK 2025 bull market list, which has literally just come out, just in the last few days, in fact. So we're going to go through that. Now, according to Hagerty, this selection has something for everyone, from practical and nostalgic 90s urban runabouts to timeless and elegant British roadsters. Hagerty points out that some of these cars are predicted to increase in value, but that some of them actually just stand out for the excellent value of money that they offer, and also the sheer joy of ownership that they bring to the owners. So let's kick off with the first car on the list, which is the 2001-2005 Alfa Romeo 147 GTA, which is a hot hatch. It delivers Italian flair and one of the best sounding V6 engines ever created. It's a 3.2 litre Busso V6. It's a masterpiece, provides a thrilling driving experience, and the car's understated looks don't necessarily scream performance, but the handling is really good. I have driven 147s. I don't think I drove a GTA, but I have driven 147s. I might have actually, but they've always been good fun to drive. The handling has always been great on those cars. Now, what you do have to keep in mind is high maintenance costs with these cars. As with any Alfa Romeo, particularly Alfa Romeos of this era, from suspension issues to rust, electrical gremlins, the cars can be as much a mechanic delight as they can be a driver's delight. Current market values, however, do make them quite affordable. So they range from about £8,500 for a fair condition car up to about £20,500 for an excellent example. The 1959 to 1967 Austin-Healey 3000. This is the epitome of British roadster charm. Long bonnet, open top design, classic styling. It's a timeless machine, it really is. I drove a couple of these, but they weren't actually, not one was a 3000, one was a regular one, but they weren't actually petrol versions. They were actually converted electric versions. There is a review of those cars on this channel, so go check them out. I mean, it's, why not? If you want to drive around town and if you want to do the whole quiet, clean electric thing, particularly say if you're restoring one and the engine's buggered, then that's always a good solution to look at, right? But there's a company that does them. The cars are really, really good. Go check out that review. Going back to these ones, obviously they were originally built for spirited weekend drives and even in some cases competitive racing. So the 3000 has really stood the test of time as a collector's favorite. It's a straight six engine, of course, provides just enough grunt for fun driving. And the car's popularity, of course, ensures that there's plenty of clubs that support it and there's lots of events and stuff like that. Now, values for these have remained fairly flat since 2015. And there has even been a recent dip, which means that actually accounting for inflation in real terms, the big Healey is actually more affordable than ever. The prices haven't really increased. So, but having said that, values do range from 22,900, which sounds reasonable, but that's for a decent car, right up to 87,500 for a concourse-ready example. And you're probably looking at around 45,400 for an excellent car that you could take to shows but also enjoy as well. Next we have the 1994-1999 Ferrari F355, and this is considered by many to be the ultimate driver's Ferrari. It's a bit of an icon of the 90s. It came about a little bit, I would say, as a result of Honda, Acura if you like, because when they came out with the NSX, Ferrari had the 458. Not the 458, the 348, sorry, the Ferrari 348 at the time. And in group tests, it was comprehensively trounced by the Honda NSX. And it sent Ferrari quickly back to the drawing board and they made a load of changes and out came the F355, which was a much better car. So this was obviously the hand-built, naturally aspirated V8. It's got pop-up headlights, which is a great thing. The lines are fantastic on it. It's got the little scoops on the side, which, I think rather than the strakes that were on the 348 that were sort of inspired by the Testarossa where they really work, I think that the scoop out formula that was kind of a design style that was used on the 355, I thought worked for the better for this sort of size of car, I think anyway. So I do think it was a better looking car. Only one isn't for the faint-hearted, of course. Belt changes are frequent and costly. Parts, especially genuine Ferrari ones, can be eye-wateringly expensive. But top tip, consider looking at cheaper Fiat parts as well, because very often they're interchangeable. They're virtually the same thing, but they're much, much cheaper than the Ferrari branded ones. So values of these are up about 6.2% in the past 3 years. So a standard Berlinetta in excellent condition is about £73,300. Values have grown even more in the US market. So keep that in mind if you're watching this over there. Overall, you're looking at between £50,600 for a fair condition car up to about £105,000 for an immaculate example. Keep in mind a 25% premium Hagerty reckons for manually equipped, manual gearbox equipped cars. Next up, the 1992-1998 Maserati Ghibli, or the AM336. This was designed by the legendary Marcello Gandini. This 90s Ghibli blends Italian style and turbocharged performance. It's an evolution of the bi-turbo. I have to say, the bi-turbo before it and this car, to me, I always thought that, these were really, really handsome cars. Now, they say that had improved reliability and significantly more power in the Ghibli thing. And in fact, they had a Ghibli Cup version, and that had 325 brake horsepower. But, let's be honest, they do look great. They drive, I've driven one, but they probably drive great, but they are going to be maintenance intensive, let's be honest. And the issues can range from electrical problems to engine problems. So if you're looking for a Maserati on the budget, this one could be tempting to get into, but I would say proceed cautiously. Repair bills can escalate quickly. Having said that, there's a broad selection of prices to choose from with these cars. And again, if you go down to a bi-turbo, a base bi-turbo with middling miles, you're looking at from £9,400. A Spider, double that amount, and at the top end for an excellent or concourse car, you're looking at between 53 to 54,000 pounds. But you know what, spend high if you really want one of these though, because the cheaper cars may be tempting, but they're probably going to be more expensive to fix up and get going and stuff like that. Bills are going to be significant, but find a good one. What a car. 1991-2003 Peugeot 106. Now this is one of Hagerty's quirkier picks. The small hatchback was ubiquitous in the 90s and early 2000s, and for many that means it's a bit of a nostalgic choice, because this is the sort of generational thing where we're getting into that sort of era now, where 80s were really big and now sort of 90s are starting to get on people's radars for classic cars as well. Now the GTI and the Rally variants are obviously the ones to get. Lightweight, nimble, fun, and they embody the classic hot hatch formula. Pristine examples are becoming rare, as most of these were driven hard and they were also heavily modified as well, so it's hard to find an original one. So, but if you can find an unmolested car, it's a charming and affordable entry into the world of classic cars. Now they're saying prices are ranging from £8,900 up to about £16,400, and maybe look for something like a Series 1 106 Rally in excellent condition. This would be listed in the Hagerty price guide at around £12,400. The 1965-1969 Porsche 912, yes, 912, not 911 or 911. The 912 basically offers, you know, all the looks. It basically is a 911, but it's cheaper, and the reason being because it has a 4-cylinder engine in it that was taken from the Porsche 356. So the 912 is lighter, it's more balanced, some people say, than the 6-cylinder sibling, because of less weight, but otherwise, to be honest, it's actually pretty much identical car. In every other sense, it's identical. So it does make an excellent choice for those seeking a classic Porsche driving experience, but without the intimidation of a more powerful version. Values for these have remained stable, and the cars are increasingly appreciated for their usability and their charm. The 912 models, that is. Prices remain stable, like I said. They're not expected to rise dramatically on these cars. The UK Hagerty price guide values excellent left-hand drive examples at £57,800, and right-hand drive models attracting a larger premium. Current market values are ranging from £26,900 up to £90,100, depending on the condition. The 1994-2001 Range Rover P38. Now, this is one that I'm most definitely not so sure about. This P38 Range Rover, obviously it was the car that finally replaced the original long-running classic-shaped Range Rover model that we're all familiar with. And those ones still look so handsome and so desirable. If you see one now, you still think, oh, that's a proper Range Rover. By contrast, this P38, it sort of epitomized boxy blandness, to be honest, in my view. It did introduce a more modern and luxurious interior, and there was wood and there was leather. There was also the car got advanced suspension systems. It did retain the commanding driving position, and of course that gave it that Range Rover cred. However, reliability issues really plagued this car, and finding a well-maintained example is critical if you want a good one. But if you do find one, you will experience a blend of off-road capability behind the wheel of a legendary brand. You know, it's the Range Rover, right? And few other vehicles can just match the cachet of that, especially of classic ones. Now, it does mean that it's a bit affordable, especially compared to, say, the classic design. So values range from £800 for a project car, wowzers, up to a still reasonable £15,800 for a top spec concourse level car. But they are getting rare now. So if you want one, if you like it, then you better act quickly. Oh, 1977, 1980 Rolls-Royce Silver Shadow 2, synonymous with luxury, elegance, and prestige. Now, this updated version, Silver Shadow 2, brought subtle improvements to its ride and handling. Nothing major, it's just slightly revised styling. Despite its reputation, these can be quite affordable to buy, and the driving experience, I gotta tell you, is simply sublime. I have driven a Silver Shadow. Most recently, I drove a Corniche 2, which of course is a convertible version of this. I drove that in the UAE. Check that out when I did the Mille Miglia. What a wonderful thing. And that car, we gave it to journalists, and they did 1,600 miles, 1,600 kilometers in the car, and even took it around the Autodrome track. And that car never missed a beat. Never missed a beat. It was utterly, utterly bomb-proof. So that says a lot about best car in the world, right? I mean, the driving experience is just sublime with these. It's got one of the best rides in the business. But, maintenance can be exorbitant, and you do have to look after them. I mean, the car that we had in Dubai was a beautiful example. And for those willing to take the plunge, though, it is, like I said, a rewarding experience. Prices have actually been quite static for these cars over the last few years. I'm talking about the Silver Shadow, except at the top end. So it's kind of weird, because what's happened is they've all stayed pretty steady, but there's been a massive gap emerging between the steady cars and the really, really good ones. The concourse cars, they've just rocketed by 20%. And so, if you want a good one, you're looking at concourse, you're going to pay a bit more, but you'll end up with a brilliant car. But on the other hand, I also think it presents a little bit of an opportunity, because if you're willing to invest a little bit of time, effort, and money, obviously, to get a decent car, but actually bring it to concourse level, then there could potentially be a bit of profit in that. Current values on these range from £5,700 to £28,700. So there is a little bit of a margin there to play with, and the very best examples are fetching closer to about £32,000. The 2001 Subaru Impreza P1. Now, this is a rally-bred legend. It was developed with input from motorsport specialist ProDrive right here in the UK. It was limited to just 1,000 cars. I think they all came in Sonic Blue. I think that was the thing that just came in one color. They were powered by 276 brake horsepower turbocharged engine, and it featured a chassis that was specifically tuned, obviously, for British roads. Electrically adjustable Recaro seats. They had the P1 logo on those seats, and they also had that logo on the big tall wing on the boot at the back. Compared to prices of the 22B, and don't forget that these were unique two-door bodied cars, the P1 represents actually great value compared to that one. So it's a great way to get into one of these, legendary rally-bred coupes, if you like. Prices for pristine examples have surged, jumping nearly £20,000 in just 3 years for excellent condition cars. So this does reflect their cult status, and Hagerty reckons that they could rise further, but only for the well-preserved examples. I mean, a lot of these have been used, they've been driven, they've been rallied, they've been modified, but I think it's those original, unmolested, low-mileage, clean cars that are really going to keep going up. The gap between, and this is indicated by the fact that the gap between the fair car prices, the fair examples, and then the top-end concourse ones, there's a 61% gap in the pricing. So you can see, regular ones, and then the really nice low mileage, well looked after ones are right at the top there. But if you're looking for a raw, exhilarating driving experience, P1 delivers that in spades, as you can imagine. And the market prices for these range from £25,000 for something that you could get in and use, right up to £72,000, £72,500, sorry, for pristine low mileage examples. 1994 to 2000 Toyota RAV4. Now, here's another one. I mean, there is no question that this first generation Toyota RAV4 has definitely earned its place in history, in automotive history, because it was a trailblazer for compact SUVs, combining basically the practicality of a small car, but giving it this sort of off-road ability, but also more the sort of look and the style and the feel of an off-roader. And it sort of started that whole genre, if you like, to an extent. And also not in dispute, of course, is exceptional reliability that you get with the Toyota RAV4. And I think Toyota RAV4s are, I mean, not just the first one, but all of them combined, I think they are the world's best-selling SUV in that segment. But does its unassuming design really qualify as a standout choice for collectors or people seeking something different? I mean, to be fair, early models in good conditions are rare, and their quirky charm could see values rise as they gain recognition because of being the pioneers of this crossover segment. And of course, they are actually affordable. Current prices range from just £600 up to £5,100 for a top spec model in really good condition. So it's a really affordable car if you perceive of it as a classic. In fact, it's probably one of the most affordable classics in the lineup that we're going to present today. But I can't help wonder if you'll really be satisfied by having one of these sitting in your garage as the designated classic, if you see what I mean. I mean, if you had one anyway and you were just using it and also but looking after it at the same time, then maybe you'd be okay with that and you could take it to something like Festival of the Unexceptional, where it could do really well. But as, you know, the charm of having a classic car in your garage, I don't know if this would quite satisfy that. Hey, are you liking this video? Then make sure that you hit the like button. That's really important. Also, tell everybody. Right, so now it's time to move on to the US, the Hagerty US, their 8th annual bull market list. And they say they focus on machines that get them excited. They also noted that modern classics from 1980s, 1990s, and 2000s are the ones that are appreciating now because the younger enthusiasts are increasingly entering that collector's car market. We kick off with the 1978-1983 Datsun 280ZX. Now, understandably, JDM fans love the original Datsun 240Z, but the 280ZX, to be honest, is more my era as well. Kind of like, you know, I quite like the 280ZX because it marked a shift, because the 240 was like a lightweight, pure sports car. But then when you came to 280ZX, it was a bit more of a luxury grand tourer. But it was still quick. I mean, turbocharged variants in particular offer a compelling blend of performance and comfort. Despite the growing popularity and compared to the best example to the 240, prices remain relatively accessible for the 280 in America. Don't forget, this is the US bull market that we've now moved on to. You know, so that makes this a great entry point into the classic Z car arena, if you like, you know. Having said that, prices have increased by 138% since 2019, so it's definitely on the up there, that's for sure. And current market values range from $12,000. Remember, this is Hagerty US list, and I'll be giving the prices in dollars that they're giving them, but I'll give you a conversion as well. So prices, but this is American market. So prices range from $12,000 up to, which is £9,800 for a good example, up to $32,800, which is about £26,800 for a pristine turbocharged example. 1981 to 1983 DeLorean DMC-12. Well, are we heading back to the future? Maybe. I mean, few cars are as instantly recognizable as a DeLorean like this, right? I mean, the gull-wing doors, the stainless steel body. I mean, it just makes that car stand out. It just makes it iconic, let's be honest. And of course, then there's the association with the whole Back to the Future movie series. And that gives it a real cultural significance. Prices have actually risen dramatically in recent years. They're up 73% since 2019. And so if you're after this sort of 80s piece of nostalgia, I mean, there is nothing quite like it. My buddy actually had one in Dubai, and he probably is going to regret this now, selling it, because he sold it a few years ago, and he shouldn't have. He should have kept it, because current prices range from $35,000, about £28,700 for a fair example, rising to $84,000, £67,250 for an excellent car, up to $121,000 or £96,900 for a concours car. Wow, he's kicking himself now. 1961 to 1964 Jaguar E-Type S1 3.8 Coupe. Now, this is, of course, the Jaguar E-Type is often referred to as the most beautiful car ever made, no less than Enzo Ferrari said that. The E-Type is a masterpiece of design and engineering. Well, it said it looks beautiful. And the Series 1 3.8 combines stunning looks with impressive performance thanks to its six-cylinder engine. Values have dipped slightly in recent years, but interest from younger collectors, they seem to be getting interested in the E-Type. I wonder if Austin Powers has something to do with that. Anyway, the interest from younger collectors suggests that they are due for a rebound. So current market prices range from $82,900, that's £66,350 for a good driver, up to $182,800, that's about £147,000 for a concourse level car. Two things I want to say. First of all, like I said, brilliant engineering, beautiful cars, they're not reliable. And they will have problems. So you get the best car you can and then be prepared for more problems anyway, because that's just part of E-Type ownership. Secondly, for those of you watching here in the UK, of course here it's a slightly different story to America, because here E-Types are far more plentiful. There's a huge network that's supporting them, resto-modding them, fixing them, making parts for them. So it does make E-Type ownership a lot easier here in the UK than it does in America. 2003 to 2013, Lamborghini Gallardo 6-speed. The Gallardo was Lamborghini's best-selling model. And there's good reason for that. At the time, it was Lamborghini's best-selling model. It had obviously the naturally aspirated V10 engine, which delivered an intoxicating soundtrack, and then it came with a manual gearbox, and those are increasingly sought after. And I have to say, personally, it was one of my favorite cars as well. And I still think that actually I prefer the looks of the Gallardo over the Huracan that replaced it. Prices actually remain reasonable compared to other Lamborghinis, relatively speaking. There's making it possibly an excellent time to get into one of these now. Market prices range from $78,800, £63,000 for early models, to $209,000, $209,700, I should say, £168,000, and that would be for a Concourse 2014 LP560-4. Though apparently you could add as much as 50% again if it's a manual gearbox equipped car. And then add another sort of up to say $60,000 for special editions, for example like the Valentino Balboni edition, which I think was only rear wheel drive, correct me if I'm wrong. That made it quite unique. My favorite of these cars was actually, and the one that I sort of did my personal best speed in, is the 2011 Superleggera. The gearbox was unbelievable. Every time you slammed in a gear change at full throttle, the car just felt like it was going to rip itself to shreds. Just brilliant. But you're looking at as much as $240,000, £192,000 for a concourse example of that Superleggera. But having said that, that's a concourse car. Go for something like a daily driver and you're looking at 100k less. But then, it'll be a little bit rough around the edges, which, if you just want to enjoy driving it, it's no bad thing. I should point out that Gallardos do appear to be cheaper here in the UK by around 15%, I would say. 2005 to 2008 Dodge Magnum SRT8. Now with 425 horsepower under the bonnet, the Dodge Magnum SRT8, unique because it was like a Dodge Charger, but an estate or a wagon version of it, as they say in America. It's one of the most outrageous estate cars ever built. It's got muscle car power, it's got everyday practicality. So it's a unique choice in the sense that it's appealing to enthusiasts, it's cool, but it's also actually quite practical. Is it a classic though? Well, I think the answer to that question comes from the fact that they have seen an increase in value. 39% increase in values in the last 5 years. I think it's taking on a bit of a cult classic status, I think. But they are incredible bang for your buck, no doubt about that. Current values range from $15,600, about £12,500, to $32,000, about £25,600. That's for an excellent example. If you want a concourse car, you're looking at as much as $47,600, about £38,000. 1961 to 1972 Volvo P1800. This is a study in style and sophistication. It's also, I would say, the sexiest Volvo ever made, full stop. Thanks to its Italian design bodywork. It does look far more expensive than it ever was, let's be honest, and even today, although prices aren't exactly cheap on them. But I've got to say, if it was good enough for Roger Moore's The Saint, then it's good enough for you and I, that's for sure. I did drive one of these. It was fantastic. I drove it briefly, but it was delightful. And we know for a fact that these are actually as classics, even as classics, they're durable and they're reliable. And they are becoming more popular with younger collectors who appreciate not only the charm, but the usability. So market prices for these range from $5,700, about £4,600, to $31,000, about £24,800 for a good car, and up to $91,000, about £73,000 for a concourse example. 1976 to 1989, Ferrari 400 412. The Ferrari 400 and 412 may not be the most celebrated Ferraris, but their elegant styling and V12 power and 2+2 seating make them a tempting choice. They're looking more elegant than ever. In fact, to be honest, I always liked them, even back in the day. That long bonnet, really low, really sleek, sharp edges. I thought they were really handsome cars. And because they're looking better than ever, values are up 50% since 2019. But overall, though, prices actually still remain relatively low, I should say. But maintenance can, of course, be a challenge. Don't forget, they are still Ferraris, and old ones at that. For those willing to take the risk, however, these cars do offer, well, they offer a lot of Ferrari for the money. Current values range from $31,000, £24,800 for a project car, up to about $59,900, which is about £49,000 for something in excellent condition. 2002 to 2006 Mini Cooper S. Now, the modern Mini Cooper S, this was when BMW took it over, and then they created their own version of the Mini. They reimagined the original Mini's charm, but they added a healthy dose of performance. But the best thing that they did about it was that they injected the fun to drive feel of the Mini into their new car. If they hadn't done that, they would have screwed the whole thing up. But that was the thing. Anybody that doubted what BMW were doing with the Mini, you just had to give them the keys and say, go for a 10-minute drive, and they'd all come back grinning. And I experienced that myself with people that I gave the car to as well when we used to get press cars in. So everybody loved it. It was great to drive. Supercharged engine, of course, with the Cooper, the nimble handling, and of course over in America, because don't forget this is a US Hagerty thing. It's got more appeal as a sort of cult British car, doesn't it? With the solid sort of heritage that it has behind it. Prices are still low, but there's rising interest from enthusiasts. Current values range from $8,000, £6,400, to $12,000, £9,600 for excellent examples. Now, I should just say, for those of you watching this here in the UK, that you are in a much better position here when it comes to this first generation Mini, because they are still very cheap here and relatively plentiful. And plus, it's a good support network for them as well. I mean, less than £2,000 will actually get you a pretty decent one of these. 1997 to 2000 Honda Prelude. Now this is an interesting one. Well, one that I wasn't really expecting on a Hagerty bull market list, but I certainly won't object to it either, because I've always been a Prelude fan, whilst I don't think that this 5th generation Prelude is as sexy as its predecessor, which I thought was absolutely beautiful. But regardless, it's true to say that the 1997 Honda Prelude, as they say, it's a hidden gem. It's known for its precise handling, its build quality, its reliability, and it's an excellent entry point for younger collectors, and values remain accessible. So the Prelude's reputation is steadily growing. Current market prices range from $10,000, about £8,000, up to $17,400, which is about £14,000 for well-maintained cars. In the UK, you can expect to pay a bit less, £5,000 up to £9,000 to get one, but that's if you can find one, because they're much rarer here. 2002-2008 Mercedes-Benz G500, yes, the fabled G-Wagon. The G500 offers a rugged off-road capability, but with a luxurious twist to it. The boxy styling, of course, is iconic, and its growing popularity reflects its enduring appeal. Maintenance costs can be steep, they say, but for those who want a piece of G-Wagon history, it's worth it. Now, personally, I guess I have biases because I lived in the Middle East, I lived in the UAE, and whilst the G500, according to them, makes a lot of sense, I tend to feel that if you're gonna get a G-Wagon, it has to be an AMG, and it has to be at least something like a G55, if not a G65, but it has to be at least a G55, ideally in white. But anyway, going back to their selection of the G500 in the US, they say there's a lot more of these suddenly appearing at auctions. They are up by 47% of their appearances, but they are selling. There's good sell-through on them. So they reckon you need about $53,200, about £43,500 for a really good example. But here in the UK, I would still say go for something like a mid-2000s G55, because with these cars, even if you get something from mid-2000s, which you're talking 20 years ago, but honestly, between that one and the latest one, there isn't a visually, only aficionados would really know that that's a new one, that's an old one. You know, if you put a private plate on it, nobody really knows even how old it is, and you still look like you're you're Russian mafia or something, right? Look to spend about, in the UK, if you're looking at mid-2000s G55, you can spend £35,000 to £40,000 to get one. 1984 to 1990 Ford Bronco 2. So when the new Bronco came out a couple of years ago, attention obviously turned to the classic originals, and so it's understandable that demand went up. Incidentally, it was driven by younger buyers. It's interesting that, right? So these charismatic 80s go-anywhere off-roaders are definitely poised to become more collectible as vintage SUVs continue to rise in popularity. Now, they say that the current values for these range from $8,000, about £6,400, up to about $15,600, about £12,600 depending on condition. That actually sounds quite reasonable. Hi guys, I've been writing. This is my first book, a novel, an all-out action thriller, and this one is a collection of 13 stories I've written over the course of 2 decades. The Euless Files and The Quantum Races by BC Guy are out now on Amazon.com. And finally, we come to my selection, my 4 cars that I'm adding to this list. I've got to be honest, these 4 cars, it's more about gut instinct. It's sort of more a personal passion, a feel for emerging trends in the market, I think. So I'm curious to hear your thoughts on my choices, but let me just get straight into it. Lotus Elise S2. This is the Toyota engined 2004 onwards version that I'm talking about. Now, I'm probably going to upset some people by saying this, but yes, the Lotus Elise S1 is a cute looking little thing. I would perhaps a little too beach buggy cute, if you see what I mean. But what I would really say is forget the old Rover K series engine. I know there's a lot of people are fans of that engine out there, but instead not only go for what I think is with the S2, it's a more sharper looking, more grown up version of the Elise. With that one, the S2 came out in 2001, but I would say specifically get them from 2004 onwards. Double check, because from that point onwards, they put in the 1.8 litre Toyota VVT-Li engine. I think it was in the 111R it came out in, and it had 189 brake horsepower, 0 to 60 miles per hour acceleration time of under 5 seconds, 4.9 seconds, and it came with a 6-speed manual gearbox, but it also introduced anti-lock brakes as well, so that's quite good. And it's not just about, obviously, it's not just about performance. I mean, with a Toyota engine, you're talking, you know that the engine is solid, it's durable, and it's reliable. I've got to say, the Elise itself, I do absolutely adore them. I think it's one of the most exciting, engaging, and visceral cars to drive this side of a Caterham. I don't think anything can touch it. The handling, the input that you get from the steering, from the seat of your pants, there's very little out there that can give you that sort of near race car rawness in something that you can actually drive daily. I mean, I'd have one. I'd have one tomorrow. Even though, to be honest with you, it's not the easiest thing to get in and out of. So be aware of that. But it is comfortable once you're in it. And the key thing that I always found with them is just leave the roof panel, just leave it off, because that way you just open the door and you just jump into it. So you just slide down into it. So it's much easier. Of course, here it rains a lot, so that's a bit of an issue. But if you can, that's the way to do it. I think these are guaranteed future classic. Current values range from £20,000 up to £35,000 depending on condition and spec. Not bad at all. Rover 75 or the MG-ZT. This is a smooth, creamy cruiser that's surprisingly fun, particularly if you go for the MG-ZT. These were actually wonderfully built, I would say, and they are, I think, an underrated gem. Now, if you remember, the Rover 75 actually came out the same year as Jaguar released the S-Type. But whilst the Rover was a little cheaper than the Jaguar, but I always thought that the Rover 75 had the plusher, nicer, more inviting interior with the wood and the leather and the sort of the classic style meets contemporary style fusion that they sort of did with the interior. I really liked them back in the day in any guise, you know. And the MG ZT Sporty versions, which, you know, I drove the Rover 75, I drove the ZT as well, and the performance was not to be underestimated. They were fun. Towards the end of the Rover's life, the company that is, they did go a little bit crazy with the 75 and the ZT, and in fact they stuck a Ford Mustang V8 engine into the engine bay and they converted them to rear wheel drive. Those are very, very tasty, but they're very rare and expensive and they're special things. And if you can get one of those, get it and put it away, it's a future classic. But frankly, the regular cars are better as cars that you can actually use as well. They're daily drivable. Keep in mind though, however, of course, the Rover is no longer around, so you will need specialists and club support for maintenance parts, etc., etc. But at the money, they are very tempting. And there was, of course, even an estate version, I think they called it the Tourer. Market prices range for these range from under £2,000 for a nice luxury saloon up to about £5,000, and that's for the 75 series. And if you're talking about the MG ZT, you're looking at a maximum of about £13,000 for a really good example. Vauxhall VXR8, well, from one very cool saloon to an even cooler saloon. I think I would say personally that apart from, say, the Vauxhall VX220 Turbo, which I did drive a lot, and of course, which was really just a rebodied Lotus Elise, which we've already covered. But apart from that Vauxhall, this Vauxhall VXR8 is probably the best Vauxhall I've ever driven. Except I have to be honest and say that I've never drove it. You see, the thing is, the Vauxhall VXR8 was sold under several different names and badges across the world. So it was actually the Holden HSV GTS in its birthplace, in effect, which was Australia, because Holden actually developed the car. So that's where it was created. But I actually drove the car, and it was pretty much the same car. I drove the car in Dubai, where it was actually called the Chevrolet CSV CR8. In fact, it had a Chevy V8 LS motor in it. In fact, it had several of them. It went up to about 6.2 liters, and by the end of its production run, it had over 570 brake horsepower in them. Manual gearbox, rear-wheel drive, muscle car performance. And what's not to love? Let's be honest. It was an absolute riot. It handled pretty good too. It was a proper thing. And the thing is, a real beast of a car, the likes of which you will never see again, certainly not with a Vauxhall badge. Because don't forget, Vauxhall is now all about making electric family cars. You just won't get this sort of rumbly, wicked monster of a thing from Vauxhall ever again. So that alone, I think, makes the VXR not just desirable, but highly collectible. It's a guaranteed future classic in my view, but right now, it's actually surprisingly still relatively affordable because prices are ranging from as little as £18,000 up to £25,000 for a really good one. So it's a bit of a performance bargain, but beware because parts, maintenance and running costs on these are not cheap. And finally, my last one on my personal selection of 4 cars that I've added to the 2 Hagerty Bull Market list to bring this list up to 25 cars to buy, or 25 classic cars to buy in 2025, is the Renault 5 Turbo or regular, to be honest. Now, what's happened, I think, with the launch of the new Renault 5 E-Tech, which of course has the silhouette, the retro styling and the silhouette of the original Renault 5, I think it's reignited interest in the original, as it always does, like with the Bronco we mentioned earlier. It's reignited interest in the classic Renault 5 models, and these ran for a long time, from 1972 up to 1996. So there's many to choose from. Though, while I say that, in the UK, they're actually quite rare. So there's not that many to choose from here. There's not many available here. But there is, like I said, a broad range. But there are some nice ones out there. I did find a few. And you can pick up decent examples for as little as £4,000, with prices rising to about £20,000 for a really good turbo, which I guess is really what you want. It is a one to have, let's be honest. I always like the angular design of these little runabouts. I think they have a lot of charm, and I think these little French classics are icons. And I think with the renewed interest, the value is only going to be heading one way, which is up. So whether you want to get one as a daily driver or to put it away as a future classic, don't delay, get one today. So there you have it. Those were Hagerty's expert picks and also my personal 4 choices for the year 2025, 25 classics to buy in 2025. What do you think? Did Hagerty get their choices right? And what do you think about my choices? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Not only about these cars, but also any additional cars that you think maybe Hagerty and myself missed. And don't forget to hit like, subscribe, share, and all the rest of it. And I'll catch you all in the next video. And before we go, Peter, you've been very kind because you had some really nice things to say about something I'd written.
Yeah, you freaked me out a little bit. Like when I met you, obviously you're a jack of all trades and you can talk about anything. But you said, Pete, I'd like you to read this story. And the story is called Stang Struck. And I start reading it. I'm actually getting, this sounds weird, but I'm getting chills because it was like he lived in the car, because he described different things that these cars, if you're used to them, they do. They all have idiosyncrasies, but he hit every nail on the head in terms of the idiosyncrasies of the car, how they act and how they perform. And I felt like I was driving the car with his character. Phenomenal. He's got a wonderful book called Quantum Races, which is a group of his short stories. The guy writes brilliantly. I promise you, I'm not just saying it. The book is worth the price just for Stang Struck. Wonderful, wonderful book.
Peter, thank you. It means a lot. It means a lot coming from you. I mean, you know your Mustangs.
I try, but you hit the nail on the head. I really enjoyed reading it, and thank you.
Shout out time, guys. Thank you so much. Hey, if you enjoy my content, why not get involved? Buy me a coffee. You can do that at either of these links. Or if you're watching on YouTube, buy me a thanks or take out a membership. It all helps. It really does.